Here's something almost no one tells you about the men who never truly forget you. It isn't because you're the most beautiful woman he has ever met. It isn't because you always knew the perfect thing to say, or because you played every situation flawlessly. The women men keep thinking about, the ones they remember years later, the ones they quietly compare everyone else to, usually have something in common that most women never even realize. They awaken something deep inside his mind that he didn't even know was there. Every man carries a few emotional triggers hidden so far beneath the surface that even he rarely notices them. And when those are activated, not through manipulation or mind games, but through genuine understanding, something changes inside him. Suddenly he starts checking his phone, hoping your message appears. He casually brings you up while talking to his friends. He begins arranging his week around the chance of seeing you. Sometimes he catches himself staring into space, replaying something you said, trying to understand why you keep showing up in his thoughts, and the strange part is that he often can't explain it. He tells himself it doesn't make sense. You may not even match the picture of the woman he always imagined wanting. Yet once those deeper emotions wake up, once you touch something beyond simple attraction, you stay in his thoughts without even trying. The harder he tries to explain it logically, the more impossible it becomes to ignore. Stay with me, because what comes next explains why this happens far more often than most people realize. Before this sounds like another dating trick, let's clear something up. This has nothing to do with pretending to be someone else. It isn't about acting distant, playing hard to get, or making someone chase you on purpose. It's about understanding how many men naturally develop lasting feelings, instead of how we assume they should. A lot of relationship advice points people in the wrong direction. It tells you to be more available, more accommodating, more perfect, as if perfection is what creates emotional connection. But men rarely fall deeply for perfection. They fall for someone who makes them experience something different. Someone whose presence creates a feeling they struggle to describe because they have never experienced it in quite the same way before. That feeling follows quiet patterns most people never notice because they are too busy counting minutes between text messages or wondering whether they said the wrong thing. Once you begin seeing those patterns, everything starts making more sense. You stop questioning every little interaction. You stop assuming attraction is pure luck. Instead, you realize it moves like a rhythm. It is chemistry meeting the right emotional timing. And the first rhythm, the one that allows everything else to grow naturally, is something I think of as the balance between being fully present and naturally absent. Keep listening, because this single shift changes more than most people expect. Most women believe being present simply means always being available. They think it means replying immediately, saying yes whenever he asks, making endless time for him, and showing excitement every chance they get. Those things may seem thoughtful, but they are not what keeps a man thinking about you after you leave. Real presence is something much deeper. It means being completely with him while you are together and completely living your own life when you are apart. Imagine the quiet questions running through his mind from the very beginning. First, when she is with me, is she actually here or is half of her attention somewhere else, checking notifications, thinking about work, planning tomorrow, or wondering what everyone else is doing? Second, does she truly want to spend this time with me, or am I simply filling an empty space in her schedule? Is she choosing this moment, or settling for it because nothing better came along? Many women answer one of those questions well, but completely miss the other, and that small difference quietly shapes how he feels without either of you noticing. There is an important reason for that, and it becomes even clearer in the next part. Some women become available all the time. They cancel their own plans whenever he becomes free. They answer every message within seconds. They slowly rearrange their lives around his schedule without realizing it. At first, he may enjoy the attention because everything feels comfortable and effortless. But after a while, something quietly changes. He stops wondering about you when you are not around because there is nothing left for his imagination to do. He already expects you to be there whenever he reaches out. There is no space for anticipation, no opportunity for curiosity to grow. Your presence becomes familiar background noise instead of something that leaves a lasting impression. Then there are women who go completely the other direction. They stay busy, independent, and constantly active, but when they finally spend time with him, their attention keeps drifting somewhere else. They keep checking messages, mentioning other plans, or dividing their focus between him and everything happening around them. He notices that too. He feels like he is competing for attention, even while sitting right beside you. It makes him wonder if he truly matters in that moment. Neither approach creates deep connection because both miss an essential piece of what keeps someone emotionally invested over time. And once you understand what that missing piece is, everything begins to fit together. When you are with him, be fully there. Put your phone away. Instead of letting it interrupt every conversation, listen without already planning your next response. Ask questions that move beyond everyday small talk. Notice the tiny details that many people overlook. The way his voice becomes more alive when he speaks about something meaningful. A slight change in his expression when he remembers an important moment. Make him feel that, for this short time together, he has your complete attention. That kind of presence is surprisingly rare today, and people remember how it feels. But when the time together ends, allow your own life to continue naturally. You do not need to send endless updates throughout the day. You do not need constant reassurance that he is still interested. You have your own goals, your own friendships, your own hobbies, and your own routines that bring you happiness whether he is there or not. He can sense that independence without you announcing it. It changes the energy between you. Instead of feeling responsible for completing your world, he begins feeling grateful that he has a place inside a life that was already meaningful. And that subtle difference is far more powerful than many people realize, because the strongest attraction rarely comes from chasing attention. It grows from respecting someone whose life already has direction. This balance quietly changes the way his mind responds. It creates moments where your time together feels real, focused, and emotionally rich, while the time apart gives those moments room to grow inside his memory. You are not disappearing to create confusion. You are not delaying replies just to make him anxious. You are simply living honestly instead of revolving your entire world around one person. When you are together, he feels your warmth and your full attention. When you are apart, he naturally notices your absence because your presence actually carried meaning. It was never empty conversation or time spent just to avoid being alone. That space between meetings becomes surprisingly powerful. It gives his mind room to replay your conversations, smile at something you said, wonder what you were doing, and quietly look forward to seeing you again. That is where emotional attachment often becomes stronger without either of you forcing it, because men usually do not keep chasing what already feels permanently guaranteed. They move toward what feels valuable, meaningful, and genuinely worth protecting. Real value is not created through endless availability. It grows from having a full life, real passions, close friendships, meaningful goals, and a sense of purpose that exists with or without a relationship. When you are building a life you genuinely enjoy instead of waiting beside your phone for the next message, he feels that difference. And instead of assuming his place in your world, he naturally wants to earn it. That quiet rhythm between meaningful presence and healthy absence is often where unforgettable connection begins. And what comes next may surprise you even more. You're not acting distant. You're not becoming cold. You're not trying to play hard to get. You're simply giving your full attention when you're together and fully enjoying your own life when you're apart. That natural balance creates a rhythm, almost like a heartbeat inside the connection, that quietly keeps him coming back. Not because you're difficult to reach, but because spending time with you feels different from spending time with anyone else. It feels real. It feels peaceful. It feels like something he doesn't want to lose. And once that feeling begins, once he connects you with that rare mix of complete presence and healthy independence, you become someone he remembers. You're not the woman who's always available. You're the woman who naturally stays on his mind. That's the first emotional switch, the one that turns simple curiosity into lasting interest. Now, here's where things become even more interesting, because the second emotional switch has very little to do with how much you love him or how much you do for him. Stay with me, because this changes the way many people think about attraction. The truth is, many men don't stay because someone loved them the hardest. They often stay because they felt deeply understood. There is a huge difference between caring for someone and truly seeing them. Many women spend so much energy showing affection, giving compliments, offering support, helping whenever they can, and all of that absolutely matters. But those actions alone don't always create the kind of emotional connection that lasts. What creates something deeper is when you notice what's happening beneath the surface. You understand the things he never says directly. You notice the weight he quietly carries. You recognize the parts of him that most people overlook. That is where emotional closeness begins. Many men move through life feeling like they always have to appear confident even when they're unsure. They act strong even when they're exhausted. They behave as if everything is under control, even during moments when they feel completely lost. Most people only notice their outside image. They assume that's the whole person. But when you develop the ability to see beyond appearances, something powerful happens, not in a way that makes him uncomfortable or exposed, but in a way that helps him feel understood. You begin noticing the little things, the way his shoulders tighten when a certain subject comes up, the slight change in his voice when stress is building even though he insists everything is fine, the smile that almost reaches his eyes but doesn't quite make it. Instead of pushing him to explain himself or demanding that he open up immediately, you simply recognize what you're seeing. Maybe you quietly say, "You seem tired today," not as an interrogation, just an observation. Or perhaps you softly say, "That really stayed with you, didn't it?" No judgment, no pressure, just understanding. Those simple moments often reach people more deeply than long conversations ever could. Because so many people spend years feeling like they constantly have to explain themselves, defend their emotions, or translate what they're experiencing inside. When someone quietly understands without forcing an explanation, something inside relaxes. It feels like finally being seen without having to perform. Keep watching, because this next example shows exactly why that matters. A friend of mine once came home after one of those exhausting days where nothing huge had happened, but everything somehow felt heavier than normal. He didn't want a long conversation. He didn't need solutions. He simply wanted a little silence while the pressure slowly faded. His girlfriend at that time kept asking question after question. "What happened? Are you okay? Tell me what's wrong." She genuinely cared, but every new question felt like another expectation he couldn't meet. The more she pushed, the quieter he became. Not because he didn't appreciate her concern, but because he felt like he was failing simply by not being ready to talk. Several months after that relationship ended, he met someone else. Eventually, another difficult day came. He walked in carrying that same emotional weight. She looked at him for a moment, smiled gently, and simply said, "Rough day?" Then she sat beside him, without asking for anything else. No pressure, no interrogation, just calm company. About 10 minutes later, he started talking completely on his own. Nobody forced it, nobody demanded it. He spoke because the space felt safe. That single evening built more trust than hours of conversations ever had before. It reminded him of something many people miss. Men rarely open up because someone insists they should. They usually open up when they genuinely feel safe enough to do it. And emotional safety often grows through quiet understanding, not endless questions. That is emotional recognition. It's the ability to notice what someone is communicating without words. It means understanding that when he becomes quiet, he may simply be processing something rather than trying to push you away. When he asks for a little space, it doesn't automatically mean he's losing interest. Sometimes he's working through something internally before he knows how to explain it. When he seems distant, it isn't always about the relationship at all. Instead of making those moments into problems, you meet him where he is. You respect his pace instead of expecting him to process emotions exactly the way you would. You allow him room to be human without demanding that every feeling be explained immediately. That changes trust in a remarkable way. He begins to feel that he doesn't have to wear a mask around you. He doesn't have to pretend everything is perfect just to avoid being misunderstood. Once someone experiences that level of acceptance, the connection often grows beyond simple attraction. You become someone who offers emotional comfort that feels difficult to replace. Many people may care about him, but very few make him feel genuinely understood. That difference quietly transforms attraction into emotional attachment. It's the kind of connection that stays strong long after the first excitement settles down. It's also the reason he suddenly finds himself thinking about you during ordinary moments, realizing just how uncommon it is to feel this understood. And that's only the second emotional switch. The third one surprises even more people. The third emotional switch is something I call freedom inside commitment. This is where many relationships unintentionally create tension without either person realizing it. Here's something worth thinking about. For many men, commitment itself isn't the scary part. What worries them is what they imagine commitment might eventually become. They worry about losing their independence. They worry about feeling controlled, constantly monitored, or needing permission to enjoy time alone or spend time with friends. Often when a woman really likes someone, she naturally wants more closeness, more conversations, more shared time, more involvement in each other's daily lives. Those desires usually come from love, not control, but sometimes they can unintentionally feel overwhelming. He may begin to feel as though pieces of his personal freedom are slowly disappearing. And when someone starts believing that loving another person means giving up who they are, they often begin pulling back. Not because the feelings disappeared, but because they fear losing themselves. That's why creating freedom inside commitment feels so different. It allows love to feel like a choice instead of an obligation. Stay with me, because this final part explains why that difference matters more than most people realize. Creating freedom inside commitment means you don't panic every time he wants an evening with his friends. You don't make him feel guilty for needing quiet time by himself. You don't expect constant updates every hour simply because you're apart. You trust, not because you're naive, but because you feel secure in yourself. That quiet confidence changes the entire relationship. When someone receives space without having to fight for it, they often stop feeling trapped and begin feeling respected. Ironically, that freedom frequently makes them want to come closer, not farther away. This pattern appears again and again. Trying to hold on too tightly often creates distance, while allowing healthy space often strengthens the bond. It may sound backwards, but it makes sense. People value choices they freely make. And if someone feels they have no choice, commitment begins to feel like pressure instead of love. This also means protecting your own identity. Continue enjoying your hobbies, keep your friendships strong, build goals that matter to you outside the relationship. When you remain a complete person instead of losing yourself inside the relationship, he doesn't see desperation, he sees confidence. He sees someone choosing to share a meaningful life, rather than someone searching for another person to complete it. That choice carries real weight. It feels genuine. It feels earned. And when two people continue choosing each other while both remain fully themselves, the connection often becomes stronger than either of them expected. The final emotional switch may be the most powerful of all, and you won't want to miss what comes next. It feels like something truly worth protecting. When you create freedom inside commitment, when the relationship feels open instead of restrictive, he naturally begins connecting you with possibility rather than limitation. He doesn't think of you as the person who slowly took away his freedom. Instead, he remembers you as the person who helped him feel even more like himself. That small shift changes everything. Once that connection forms, once he realizes that sharing life with you actually makes his world feel bigger instead of smaller, he doesn't want to lose it. What keeps pulling him back isn't control or pressure. It's the rare feeling of being deeply committed while still feeling completely free. That's the third emotional switch. The one that quietly transforms commitment from something heavy into something that feels exciting. And now we reach the fourth and final emotional switch, the one that often decides whether attraction slowly disappears or grows stronger year after year. Stay with me, because this last one brings everything together. Many people never notice it, yet it often becomes the difference between a relationship that simply survives and one that continues growing long after the excitement of the beginning fades. One thing that isn't talked about enough is that many men quietly worry about standing still. They don't want to wake up years later and realize they became the same person they were a decade earlier. They don't want to look back wondering where their growth disappeared. That's why the woman who inspires growth without forcing it often becomes unforgettable. Notice the difference. Inspire, not demand. Those two approaches create completely different results. Many women, with the best intentions, try to encourage growth through criticism. They point out weaknesses, suggest improvements, mention what he should change, or remind him where he could do better. Even when those observations are accurate, they often create resistance because they leave him feeling like he isn't enough as he is. It can feel less like love and more like being treated as a project that constantly needs fixing. But the women who truly encourage growth use a different approach. Instead of focusing on what is missing, they notice what is already strong. They highlight qualities worth building on. They quietly celebrate character instead of constantly correcting behavior. That difference may seem small, but it changes the emotional atmosphere in ways that last far longer than criticism ever could. Sometimes the most powerful encouragement comes through simple observations. You might say, "I really admire how you stay determined, even when things get difficult." Or, "The way you handled that situation showed a lot of maturity." Maybe it's something even smaller like, "You're really good at making people feel heard. I noticed that." These aren't empty compliments meant to flatter him. They're thoughtful observations that show you're paying attention to who he is beneath the surface. You're noticing his character instead of only reacting to what he does. And something interesting happens when people feel genuinely seen in that way. He slowly begins seeing himself through your eyes. He starts believing more deeply in those strengths because someone he respects noticed them first. Without pressure, without demands, he naturally wants to become even more of that person. That's what being a growth catalyst really means. You're not trying to reshape him into someone different. You're helping him recognize qualities that were already there waiting to grow. Keep watching because this next part explains why your own personal growth matters just as much as anything you ever say to him. Being a growth catalyst doesn't mean acting like his teacher, his parent, or his life coach. It doesn't mean constantly pushing him towards self-improvement. Instead, your own life quietly becomes the example. You're reading books that challenge your thinking, you're learning new skills, you're pursuing meaningful goals. You're becoming a little wiser, a little stronger, and a little more confident every year. Not for him, for yourself. That energy naturally spreads. Growth has a quiet influence. When someone spends time around a person who genuinely enjoys improving their own life, it often inspires reflection without a single lecture. He begins thinking about his own future because your example gently reminds him that growth never really stops. Suddenly standing still doesn't feel as comfortable anymore. He wants to become the kind of man who can walk beside you with confidence, not because you're competing or keeping score, but because you both value becoming better versions of yourselves. That's what creates a relationship that keeps moving forward. Two people choosing to grow together instead of asking the other person to stay exactly the same forever. And that shared direction often becomes one of the strongest foundations lasting relationships can have. When someone feels that kind of encouragement, something quietly changes inside them. He begins associating your presence with becoming a better version of himself. Not because you demanded it, but because being around you naturally brings out qualities he wants to strengthen. Many people are willing to accept someone exactly as they are today, but the person who also believes in who they could become often leaves an even deeper impression. You become someone who notices his potential during moments when he struggles to see it himself. You remind him of his best qualities simply by recognizing them. You reflect back the strongest parts of his character, and that inspires him to reach for them again and again. That's the fourth emotional switch. Not an attachment based on dependency, but one built around shared growth and mutual encouragement. The connection becomes about more than attraction. It becomes about who both of you are becoming together. And that's a feeling many people spend years searching for without realizing exactly what they're looking for. When you step back and look at the bigger picture, these four emotional patterns begin fitting together naturally, being fully present while also maintaining your own life. Seeing someone clearly without demanding constant explanations, creating commitment that still allows freedom, inspiring growth by continuing your own journey. None of these are tricks. None of them are manipulation. They're simply habits that often support stronger emotional connection when they exist alongside honesty, respect, and genuine compatibility. The beautiful part is that you don't have to become someone else to practice them. You don't need to memorize techniques or perform a role. You simply become more intentional about the way you show up, fully present when you're together, confident enough to enjoy your own life when you're apart, understanding instead of assuming, encouraging instead of controlling. Keep watching, because this final thought brings everything together in a way you won't want to miss. When those four qualities naturally come together, something important often changes inside the relationship. You stop worrying about every delayed reply. You stop overthinking every conversation. You stop trying to perform a version of yourself designed to keep someone interested. Instead, you understand that the right person doesn't need endless convincing. They simply need the chance to experience the real you, the version of you who is fully present without becoming dependent, who understands without demanding perfect communication every moment, who makes commitment feel safe instead of restrictive, who quietly inspires growth simply by continuing to grow herself. When someone experiences that kind of connection, it often stands out because it feels rare, not perfect, real. They begin valuing what the relationship brings into their life, not only who you are as an individual, but who both of you become together. That's not about controlling emotions or creating unhealthy obsession. It's about building a connection that feels meaningful enough to protect. The kind that grows stronger with time instead of weaker. The kind that leaves both people looking back years later feeling grateful they chose each other. Because lasting love rarely depends on luck alone. More often, it grows through steady rhythms, mutual respect, emotional understanding, and the small choices two people continue making every single day. And now you understand the 4 emotional patterns that can help create exactly that kind of lasting connection.